did you not think that connection was worth mentioning?
I beg your pardon, sir. I thought the question sought a connection for me, not for my family members, and I apologize if I incorrectly interpreted that question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other members of the committees, either House or Senate committees, have any questions? Are there members of the public that like to speak one way or the other? Any members of the public?
Senator, I believe they're getting moved into the room at this point.
Okay. The first one would be Janice Grenadier. Is that right?
Yes, sir. It is.
All right, Janice Grenadier. Okay. Please say who you are first.
Okay. I'm Janice Walt Grenadier. I am the ex-wife of the son of Judge Albert Grenadier, and Alona Grenadier Heckman is my ex-mother-in-law. Her case most likely was before you at some point. The complaints I filed with the bar. The judges have acted inappropriately. The bar has acted inappropriately. And the jerk committee on the judges have acted inappropriately. Not only that, you mentioned Judge Sheridan. Judge Sheridan has several cases that he has also targeted several people that could be considered part of the old boys network one or other times. And then all of a sudden the judges decided they were going to attack them in the courts, which is what has happened to me. You have ignored that. Not only that, one of the things that we need in the city of Alexandria is cleaning house. We need the jerk cleaned up. We need the bar cleaned up. I'm not alone on this, and I think you saw that in the meetings. We don't need another insider. She was with the bar. She was, yes, sir?
Is that your question?
My question is to her. My question to her is how she's going to handle cases like this, where there's such great friendships between her and the opposing counsel, or with the lawyers that are being taken to task in the court.
Okay, let her answer the question.
Thank you, sir.
Would you like to answer the question?
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Ms. Grenadier, and thank you for that question. Let me begin very briefly by saying that I'm not familiar with any matters you might have filed with the State Bar. I wasn't involved in those and didn't handle them, so I apologize that I'm not able to speak to that because I'm not familiar with any of those matters. With regard to how I, as a jurist, handle appearances in front of me of folks with whom I have a personal relationship, as the law is clear that it is up to each judge to make a determination following disclosure as to whether or not he or she should recuse. And under appropriate circumstances, I would absolutely recuse myself if I felt that my relationship with either the attorney or the party before me was such that I would be unable to be impartial in my decision making.
Any further questions?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You also have the law behind you that if you know of something that inappropriate has taken place, you have to, by law and by right, report it. Now, it would almost be impossible to have not heard about what Alona Grenadier Heckman has done, how she's stolen monies through her trust accounts, how she has hired lawyers and the judges and lawyers have colluded, how I was illegally jailed. So I'd like you to explain to me how you haven't heard any of this.
Ms. Grenadier, I'm sorry, Senator.
Go ahead, Kathleen.
I apologize, Ms. Grenadier. I haven't. I'm not familiar with any of that. I do know Ms. Grenadier through the Bar Association, but not well, and I'm not familiar with the circumstances that you described. I will say that I did observe the December 11th interviews that were conducted last December of the judges whose candidacies were up for reappointment. And I did hear you discuss those issues at that time. That is how I first learned of the issues that you are now speaking of. But prior to that time, I was not aware.
Mr. Chair.
Okay.
as knowing about them at this point, don't you feel an obligation to investigate and to take into your own hands as to wanting to join the circuit, wanting to be in that court, to know that you're walking into a court where it's ruled by law and not by friendship?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair. Let her answer the question, Kathleen.
Mr. Chairman, point of order.
Mr. Chair. Let her answer the question.
There's never been a hearing like this, John.
We need to move on. Go ahead. If you want to answer the question, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Senator.
This is the absolute worst, John.
Mr. Chair, there's never been a give and take between a witness and a
ever, not ever,
okay,
not in 30 years.
Kathleen, if you'd like to answer the question, then we got to move on to the next person. Go ahead, Kathleen.
I'm afraid I don't have enough information to answer the question.
All right, let's
okay, now the next person would like to speak is Saeed Shaman. Is that it? Saeed Shaman. Saeed Shaman, is that it? Shannon?
Mr. Chairman, while we're waiting for the member of the public to come forward, I would like to raise on behalf of the House that the meetings have never had a back and forth, had a testimony. I would ask that we observe that.
Right. Okay. I understand. Saeed Shaman, is there a
John,
Saeed?
don't let this be a mockery. John, don't let this be a mockery.
Is there a Saeed Shaman? All right.
Yes, sir.
Reader Daniel.
My wife was murdered by the city of Alexandria courts. Lisa Kerner stated clearly that my wife, she is not incapacitated. Then Judge Clark, after seeing money, who was on board, brought to his lawyer friend Mitchell to find my wife. She is incapacitated to steal her house and money. They put her in nursing home that killed her. I now have a 1983 lawsuit against the city of Alexandria, wrongfully dead for my wife, and the thief of the money from me, putting Miss Austin, Kathleen Austin, as a judge, harm me further with the other cases. I study her past history career. I believe that she are not qualified for this position. She is insider. She have a wide, broad friendship with the city of Alexandria, and she has to recuse herself from the bench. She is not qualified for this position.
Okay, thank you. Next person, Rita Daniel. Alvarez. Daniel, did I say something?
Ms. Daniel, you're currently muted.
Did that unmute it?
Rita Daniel?
Can you hear me now?
Are you Rita Daniel?
Yes, I'm Rita Daniel.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
All right, my name here is Janice Grenadier, but I'm actually Rita Daniel. I've had experience with Ms. Houston back at least 2014. And do you want me to ask questions or do you want me to make statements?
Make a statement, please.
Okay, yes, sir. I found her to be vindictive, demanding, threatening, and dishonest in the case that I had in 2014. It's lasted with me because she's done nothing since 2014 to clean up the process of that case. It was an impairment hearing. She was threatening that she was going to have a show cause issued for my client if she didn't come to a hearing, which my client didn't need to attend because she had admitted that she was impaired. And I was going to be there in her stead, so the client didn't have to come to that hearing. I've got 40 years of experience with state bar matters, so I know the process.
Are you a lawyer?
I was a lawyer, and I'm going to tell you why I'm not a lawyer right now, or at least not a practicing one. But first, let me finish about Mrs. Houston. I think this hearing is about her. As such, she's had probably, 6 years after that hearing to clean up a process that lacks due process. There is no appeal from an impairment hearing. None if someone is not impaired. And the state bar has a process where they can take the license of a very competent person, such as I, if I won't agree, or the client wouldn't agree back then, to sign releases to release 5 years of medical records from all providers and go to an independent psychiatric exam. Now, in the case I had with Ms. Houston, that was not an issue, although we did limit, finally, the medical releases, which violate HIPAA, they violate attorney-client privilege, they violate family privileges, they violate privacy, they violate friends' privileges, because in your medical records, you may very well have many things about your clients that you don't and would never reveal about your clients. And they want 5 years from every provider, from a podiatrist to an eye doctor. She's had 5 years to work, or 6 years to work on that process since
Mr.
I
Chair.
contact with
Okay,
her.
go ahead.
Plus,
Make your
one
point.
more
Go ahead.
thing.
Make your point.
My other point is that
Mr. Chair, is there a time limit on our witnesses this afternoon?
Listen, we got to move along. I'll
Okay.
give you 15 more minutes, 15 more seconds.
since there's no appeal, there's no due process, she's done nothing to clean that up. The other thing is she's privy to all kinds of secret information, which she can use against people who come in as litigants or lawyers, and no one will ever know it.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, Natalie Dalton, would you like to say something? Natalie Dalton. Is there Natalie Dalton out there? Natalie Dalton. Is she coming, Shannon?
Mr. Chair, I'm looking right now. Apologize.
Okay.
It looks like she might be in the waiting room under Miss Grenadier's name, if IT could move that in.
Yeah, okay. We don't. Okay.
Mr. Chair, point of order.
I think we've heard from enough grenadiers, haven't we?
David Sullivan, go ahead.
I would suggest, given the hour, the amount of time we've spent, that we impose a time limit on witnesses.
Okay, I'll give her 30 seconds. Natalie Dalton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
4 people that signed up ahead of time. Natalie Dalton. Shannon, is that person here?
Mr. Chairman, I do not believe
This is Janice Paul Grenadier, and I appreciate you looking for her as hard as you had. She may have gotten caught up at work and unable to speak,
We'll have to move
but she was also opposed to having other friends, the judges in the position. Thank you.
Now, let Kathleen Olson, would you like to say a last word or two?
Mr. Chair,
very briefly.
Senator Edwards.
Yes.
Before we let Senator Ms. Houston go, I need to say something quickly here.
Yeah, go ahead, Delegate Simon.
So, a couple things. First, we had the opportunity, as we usually do. There's usually sort of some friendly back and forth and an introduction by a member of the delegation who talks about the judge before us. And at that point, had that happened, I had planned to disclose to the group that I was happy to see Katie here, and that I call her Katie because, in fact, her husband and I are law partners. And so that opportunity didn't afford itself just because of the way the virtual event came out. I would also point out that if you look at her SOEI, or Statement of Economic Interest, you will see the disclosure of the connection to the law firm. So it's not that there was any effort to disclose or to fail to disclose or to hide SOEI. And so I just want to make a couple of those points on the record. Certainly no effort to try and hide or disguise or obfuscate here. And then I also want to frankly apologize to Ms. Houston, because I'll disclose to all of you that I talked to her about this hearing, having sat through many of these over the years. And I have to apologize because what you just experienced is nothing like what I described. And I will tell you that is because that is nothing like I've ever seen before. And so I just wanted to make sure you understood that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Mr. Chair?
Committee want to say something, Mr. Morsi?
Yeah. I actually think it's relevant to ask a witness if you've ever served as a substitute judge and ask them their experience, if they've ever done any criminal jury trials and civil trials.
That's
if
fine.
Delegate Simon doesn't feel that that's relevant, that's fine.
No, that's fine. Okay.
Thank you.
That's enough. Anybody on the committee want to say anything? Kathleen, would you like to say any last words?
Last words, my thanks to all of you for your time. I'm hopeful that I will be able to fill the spot in the 18th Circuit, and if I am given that opportunity, I promise that I will do a good job and make all of you proud. And I appreciate your time.
Thank you very, very much. I'm sorry that we had what we had to deal with.
That's fine.
Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, ready to move on? Judge Robert McDonald. Robert G. McDonald. Judge, you're here.
Yes, sir.
First